Harvey Barnes looks like he's going to be making his way to Newcastle United as opposed to West Ham. Stress, bad, sad. Or is it, to be honest? I'm not that fussed about this one. You know, I'm gonna try and talk it through here, and maybe I'll change my mind. Maybe I'll become more fussed. And I think actually Harvey Barnes joining Newcastle is a much bigger problem for West Ham in its entirety, structurally, systemically, than it is the specific player of us losing out on Harvey Barnes. Because Harvey Barnes in general, whatever, man. Whatever. It's not that deep for me. That's not that deep for me. But I can't act like I'm not still in this sort of sunny disposition phase. You know, happy Sunday. I hope you're well. Tomorrow begins pre-season. We're still technically in our summer holidays. I hope you've enjoyed them. And I have. I've just embraced being a European Cup winner. I've just embraced, you know, the glow of having won a trophy. And although the stress of West Ham and the maelstrom of everything that always goes wrong at West Ham has been sort of floating around, and us not having signings and this and that and the transfer committee and so many other things that you could make a million videos on, I've just enjoyed being like, do you know what, we won a trophy. I'm fine with just sort of letting everything ride for now, and we'll see at the end how that all works out. The thing is, we're at the end now, and you know, we start our pre-season, something I'm always excited for. I love pre-season. Pre-season's great. There's all the optimism of actually we might be really good this year. What are we going to see? What tactics we're going to play? What players are going to be playing? You know, are we going to get to see the likes of Mubama, for example, getting game time in pre-season? These are all things I always get incredibly excited for. But the one thing we won't be seeing is any new signings. Despite the fact that this summer has felt a little bit different in that, one, we know we're about to have a shed load of money coming in, but also there has been a consistency in our targets. It's not been the usual West Ham of just spurious and billion links to a billion different players. Certainly there have been a lot of links to a lot of different players, but nowhere near the usual level we have where it's just every single Tom, Dick and Harry from everywhere in the world being linked to us. We've had a couple of really consistent, strong links. Dennis Zakaria, for example, is one of those. He looks like that is something that could potentially actually genuinely happen. Not just some random link to, we want to get Dennis Zakaria, you know, from Juventus or whatever. No, this looks like it's a thing that could actually genuinely happen. Italians are saying it could potentially happen this week, right? We'll have to see. We'll have to see on that one. But we've had those strong links, and Harvey Barnes has been one of those. He's been a guy we've been linked to for a very, very long time. And initially, the reports have always stayed consistent. The reports have always been, basically, from the beginning, that we're interested in Harvey Barnes once Declan Rice goes, which doesn't really make sense in my head at first, because I'm thinking to myself, well, why the heck would we want to go for a winger once Declan Rice goes? Surely it would be maybe we want to get a defensive midfielder, like, let's say Sangare, for example. Maybe we're interested in Sangare and we're going to get Sangare once Rice goes. That sort of makes sense, although I prefer to get the replacement in, because this summer of all summers, Jesus Christ, we're probably going to get fleeced and pay too much money for certain players. That makes sense. So why the heck would we be going for a winger after we sell Declan Rice? That's weird, but the truth is that we just don't have the money. It's clear as day we don't have the money, right? That makes sense. That all of a sudden makes sense. And 50 million is a huge outlay for Harvey Barnes, you know? Now, I don't think they're going to get 50 million, by the way, when he eventually does move to Newcastle or wherever he goes, because Newcastle fans are obsessed with this being another smokescreen, because the word smokescreen got used once, and so now everything is a smokescreen, I keep saying. But let's just say, for sake of argument, when he goes to Newcastle, I don't think it's going to be 50 million, but it makes sense. We can't spend that sort of money if we're not got a big budget this summer, which doesn't seem like we're going to until Declan Rice's money comes in. We can't just be spending 50 million or whatever it will end up being on Harvey Barnes. It just doesn't. It's just not something we can do. It's just not something we can do, and it's not something I think we should do. Like 50 million or whatever it ends up being is a lot of money for Harvey Barnes. Harvey Barnes, a good player. Fine, he's a fine player, very capable. Scored a lot of goals last season. I think he scored like 13 in the Premier League despite being relegated, but is he the right player for West Ham? I'm not convinced he is. Let's talk about it in terms of type, right? He is very much in the mold of Jarrod Bowen, right? He's going to pick up, he's going to drive towards goal, he's going to be looking for goals. You know, despite getting a huge amount of goals last season, I think he got 1 assist. Someone could have to correct me if I'm wrong. I think he got 1 assist. Now, that's not indicative of his entire career, by the way. It's definitely been higher in previous seasons, but that's the type of guy you're getting. You're getting a Jarrod Bowen guy, but on the left. I don't want a Jarrod Bowen on the left. that doesn't seem to make sense in my head, because as much as the temptation there is to put Jared Bowen on one side, have Harvey Barnes on the other, have Skamakara in the middle, just everyone shooting all of the time, just shots, just no vibes, just all shots, put Ben Rama in a number 10 position, let's just keep piling on and see what happens. Very Slaven Bilic way of approaching it, and don't get me wrong, I do love Slaven Bilic, but that's not really how that works. I think we need something more. I think we need someone more creative on the left-hand side. Someone who's going to be able to provide assists a lot. Someone who's going to be able to provide assists a lot to Jared Bowen. Give him more consistent service. Give whoever the striker is more consistent service. Not someone who's going to be looking for goal themselves so much. Don't get me wrong. You want someone who's still going to score goals, and you want someone who's going to be able to do both, ideally. Ideally, you'd want someone who could do everything, right? But Harvey Barnes is certainly more of a goal scorer than he is an assister, and I would much prefer someone who's more of an assistant than a goal scorer, specifically when we're playing Jared Bowen. Now, of course, if we weren't playing Jared Bowen, maybe it'd be a different scenario. And actually, if Harvey Barnes was a right winger, I'd be here for it. I mean, I wouldn't want to see two of our most valuable players being playing in the exact same position. Is a bit of a waste, but the idea of having a backup to Jared Bowen, or someone who is better than Jared Bowen at doing what Jared Bowen does, big, grand, and actually we need another right winger in my opinion. I'm hoping Maxwell Cornet can sort of be the backup right winger at the moment, but I think we really should be looking into that position, looking for a backup to Jared Bowen, because right now we have nothing, and that is a big problem. So stylistically, it's just not the right, it just doesn't fit for me, or what I think we need if we are to go back to Moyes ball. And I say back to Moyes ball, we've been in Moyes ball for the last couple of months. It kept us up, it won a Europa League, it won a Europa Conference League. I don't necessarily blame the club and Moyes for going, we need to just go back to this and stick to this. It's not what I want. I want to see us playing a more expansive style of football. I want to see us trying to take that step forward. But sure, I get it. I get it, and I can't really complain too much given the situation. I think if we're doing that, that doesn't really make too much sense for me. And neither does that 50 million figure, or the figure, whatever it's going to end up being. Because we need to be looking at transfers like Declan Rice and learning from it. Selling at the right time is vital for a club like West Ham. We can't just keep players forever. One of the things that has been said with gleeful reverence, let's say, by David Sullivan the entire time he's been here is, we are no longer a selling club. And sure, that's a nice thing to hear. But actually, sometimes you do have to sell your players. You do. And it's at the right time when they make the maximum amount of money they can make. How many times during David Sullivan's reign have we had a player that's been worth a significant, not huge, not the Rice amounts of money, but a significant amount of money, and we've not sold them, and then guess what? A couple of years later, they leave for significantly less. Issa Diop is the main example that comes straight to my head. He's a monster, says Jose Mourinho. 60 million, 50 million pounds he's being linked with a move away. We don't do it. We batten down the hatches. He's not for sale. We can't sell him under any circumstances. Well, you do a couple of seasons later for significantly less than you could have sold him at that time. Czech Karte, another one who just straight away comes into my head as someone who was being linked to moves away to places like Tottenham for 20, 25 million. I don't know what he ended up going for, but it certainly wasn't anywhere near that to Crystal Palace. These are the things that we need to learn to do. Sell at the right time. And with Harvey Barnes, I don't know when that time would come. If you're looking to make a profit, if you're looking to turn a profit on a player like that, you're looking at Harvey Barnes coming in and playing 2 really, really, really strong seasons. Seasons where he's putting up the kind of goal scoring numbers he put up last season, but adding a significant amount of assists. Like I say, I think he got 1 last season, or in the Premier League at least. And clubs aren't going to be spending that much money on someone who's not doing that. Because realistically, when you're looking at those sort of figures, moving from West Ham for those sort of figures, it means you're moving to a top club. No top club's going to spend 50, 60 million. Or if you're looking for profit, you're looking at more like 60 million for Harvey Barnes. If you're looking at those sort of figures, those sort of numbers, those sort of finances, you're looking at a guy for a top club, for a Manchester United, for an Arsenal, for a Chelsea, for whoever it might be, right? Coming in and starting, well, maybe not Chelsea, because Jesus Christ, they spend money like madmen. But you're looking at someone who's going to come in and start straight away for that team. And I just don't see it with Harvey Barnes. You're hoping that he puts up the sort of numbers that he put up last season in terms of goals, increasing his assists output. And even then, you're making what? 10 million profit on him? Now, 10 million profit is not to be sniffed at. And actually, if you're looking at a player you buy for 10 million and then sell for 20 million, grand old time. When you're looking at a player you buy for 50 and sell for 60, I don't know. the value for money aspect of it just doesn't add up to me. And it does for a club like Newcastle. Newcastle can go and spend that amounts of money on a player like Harvey Barnes, someone who, I'm not even guaranteed, I'm not even sure he starts for them every single week, but someone who makes sense for them now, has that English player quota, so as they evolve as a club, as they get bigger, as they get better players, can sort of devolve into a sort of squad player but still be incredibly useful because the English bit, and also be incredibly useful because he's still pretty good. That makes sense for a club like that. It reminds me of Manchester City when they first got money, you know, and they go and buy Roque Santa Cruz for 20 million and Craig Bellamy, you know, people who have done it in the league, people who are playing for their rivals, people who can just go and nab the good players from the Premier League that their rivals have, make everyone else weaker, make themselves stronger, put themselves in a good position going forward, and then you supplement that with the big names like your Tonali's or your Brunos or your Alexander Isaks, right? It makes sense for a club like Newcastle. They can afford to spend that. We can't. And the other thing is that that's maybe not sitting as negatively in my head as it has as these other things have, but certainly it's been in the back of my head. It's pre-Stighton, you know? I don't know how to pronounce his name yet. Mr. T, we're going to go. Timmy. Mr. T. Not the South Park character. It's pre-Mr. T coming in. And now, look, don't get me wrong, he comes in, he goes, "You're right, lads, what we got going on? Who are we thinking?" And David Moyes, Sullivan and Mark Noble go, "Yeah, we're really into this Harvey Barnes guy." And he goes, "Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, all right, fair enough." Sure, that exact conversation, quote that, could have happened, right? But the fact that it's pre him, it worries me a little bit. Again, this is why I wanted director of football, if you're ever going to get one, to come in significantly before the transfer window starts, so it can work forward and move forward with these sort of things. It just doesn't sit right with me, because he's the guy who's going to hopefully guide us forward. I suspect this time next season we will have a different manager, one way or the other. You know, listen, if we go and we somehow win the Europa League again, maybe David Moyes gets a renewed contract at that point. He probably should get a renewed contract at this point. I don't think that's going to happen. So I suspect what's going to be the case is either he'll work to the end of his contract and then he'll head off to another club. Job well done. You know, Leonard Nimoy, my job here is done, that kind of thing. Maybe that'll be the case. Potentially it all goes wrong and he leaves, and actually in someone like Steidon, we have someone who is more prone to moving on managers. You know, we look at what he did last season, for example. Let go of the previous guy despite finishing third in the Bundesliga. Bang, in they brings Xabi Alonso. You know, this is a guy who's done really well. He's not doing well right now. Let's get him gone. Let's get a new guy in who I've been looking at in Xabi Alonso. They do really well again. We've got a guy who's maybe prone to doing that. Now, maybe this transfer committee of the four of them, Mr. T, David Moyes, David Sullivan, Mark Noble, that was a different video. But maybe that will slow that process down a bit. But still, I suspect at the end of the season, David Moyes will be gone. And so for me, Mr. T is the guy who's going to be guiding us forward, who's going to be pushing us into this next era of West Ham, post David Moyes, post Declan Rice, post Mark Noble to some extent. Just this next era of West Ham where we're going to have a director of football, potentially new owners down the line, that sort of stuff. And for me, I think he should be having the most amount of say in it possible. Like I say, he might have come in and gone, "Yeah, Harvey Barnes is a vibe, get Harvey Barnes." But it just doesn't instantly grab me as something that he would have done. Do you know what I mean? And that has sort of been lingering in the back of my mind the entire time. So you add all that together and I think, do you know what? Harvey Barnes to Newcastle, I'm not that fussed. I'm really not. It's a lot of money for someone who I don't think significantly improves us. I think he's better than what we have in that position currently. I think he's better than Ben Ramos, Fornals and Cornet, but is he that much better? He's not £50 million better, is he, really, if we're being honest about it? Equally, I don't know. Does he fit? I don't know. The bigger problem for me is that we've clearly targeted this guy for a long, long time and we haven't even begun to make a move. We were going to formalise our interest once Declan Rice goes. That's the bigger problem. The slow-moving nature of everything. That's the worry. That's the concern. Not Harvey Barnes leaving. Don't care. The bigger problem is that we have dithered, for lack of a better term, on this situation for way, way, way too long, and we've seemingly missed out on what seems to be our top target. Now, hopefully we can go and get someone in for the same role who's much cheaper, represents better value for money, and can still put in performances and, start the sort of Brighton-esque churn, the Leverkusen-esque churn, if you want to look at Mr. T's track record of going and buying people smartly and then selling them at the right time to make big profits, which is not something you can do with Harvey Barnes. But that requires buying players, and we sort of need to speed up with that a little bit, because at this point, time's ticking, man. Time is ticking, and we can't let it go on forever. We can't let it go on forever. Just buy someone. Just buy someone at West Ham. Buy someone.